Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into the Sinaloa Cartel in Mexico, a really complex and, well, powerful organization.
Absolutely. We've gathered a bunch of sources, articles, reports, and the goal is really to pull out the key information.
Right. To give everyone listening a clear picture of its history, how it operates, and the impact it has, which is pretty huge.
It really is. We want to get past the headlines, understand what makes it tick, how it's lasted so long.
Okay, so let's start right there. What is the Sinaloa Cartel exactly?
Well, fundamentally, it's a massive international drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime syndicate.
And it goes by other names too, right? I've seen Guzmán organization.
Yeah, or the Federation, sometimes the Pacific Cartel. The U.S. government actually designated it a foreign terrorist organization, too.
Wow, okay. And its home base is Culiacan in Sinaloa, Mexico.
That's right. Culiacan is sort of the heartland. But their
Mhm.
activities are extensive. Drug trafficking is the big one, obviously.
Including fentanyl manufacturing now, which is a major issue.
A massive issue. Plus money laundering, weapons trafficking, people smuggling, and then the really dark stuff. Murder, kidnapping, bribery. It's a full spectrum.
And this isn't new. They've been active since 1987.
Since 87, yeah. Still going strong today, despite everything. Their territory in Mexico covers Sinaloa, naturally, but also Sonora, Chihuahua, Durango, Nayarit.
Significant areas.
And who's running the show now? The names that come up are Ivan Archivaldo Guzman Salazar.
Jesus Alfredo Guzmán Salazar, those are El Chapo's sons, known as Los Chapitos, and Ismael Zambada Sicarios, who's the son of El Mayo Zambada, though there have been some very recent developments there.
We'll definitely get to those later.
Sure.
They don't operate in isolation. They have rivals, right? A lot of them.
Absolutely. The big one these days is the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the CJNG. Fierce rivals.
Then there are Los Zetas, the Gulf Cartel. That rivalry seems to have heated up again recently, since 2021, yeah. Also the Juarez Cartel, Los Mazatlecos Tijuana Cartel, even some U.S. gangs like Logan Heights and Barrio Azteca, and of course the Beltran Leyva Cartel, which actually split off from Sinaloa. It's a crowded and bloody field.
So let's rewind a bit. Where did this all start? It wasn't always this huge global thing, was it?
No, not at all. It really grew out of smaller networks. Back in the late 1960s, you had figures like Pedro Avilés Perez.
Ah, right. He was mainly into marijuana smuggling.
Primarily marijuana, yeah. But he was pioneering. He was one of the first major traffickers to really grasp the potential of using aircraft to move drugs into the U.S. That was a game changer.
So he kind of laid the foundation.
He really did. His group was almost like a training ground for the next generation of Sinaloan traffickers.
And that leads to the Guadalajara cartel connection.
Yeah.
With Felix Gallardo.
Exactly. Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, along with figures like Rafael Caro Quintero and Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, formed the Guadalajara cartel in the late 70s, early 80s.
And they dominated the 80s, controlling those key routes into the U.S.
Totally. But then Felix Gallardo got arrested in 1989. That was a huge moment.
Because it caused the whole thing to splinter?
Pretty much. The Guadalajara cartel broke apart, and out of those fragments, the Sinaloa cartel really started to take shape as its own powerful entity.
And that's when figures like Joaquín, El Chapo, Guzmán started to rise in the 90s and 2000s.
Right. El Chapo became a central figure overseeing massive expansion. But that era was also marked by intense violence as they fought for control.
And their product line expanded way beyond marijuana.
Oh, yeah. Cocaine became huge, then methamphetamine, heroin, and now, in the last decade or so, fentanyl. They became major players in all of those global markets.
And their reach became global, too, not just North America.
Far beyond. Networks across the Americas, into Europe, even Asia. They're incredibly adaptive at finding new routes, new markets.
How do they manage that? Is it just brute force?
It's a mix. They use everything. Sophisticated tunnels under the border, we'll definitely dig into those.
Yeah, those are infamous.
Maritime shipments, container ships, speedboats, submarines even. And, crucially, corruption. Bribing officials, infiltrating government and law enforcement. That's key to their operations.
It sounds like a parallel state sometimes. That level of influence is staggering.
It really is. And that's why, despite major arrests, El Chapo himself multiple times and huge drug seizures, the organization just keeps going.
They just adapt.
They adapt. They find new methods, new routes. The tunnels under the U.S.-Mexico border are a prime example of that sophistication.
And their main hubs in Mexico are still Sinaloa, Baja California, Durango, Sonora, Chihuahua.
Those are the core territories, yeah. But like we said, the influence spreads through Latin America and deep into U.S. cities.
It's telling that the U.S. intelligence community called them the biggest, most powerful drug trafficking organization in the world.
Bigger, potentially, than Escobar's Medellin cartel at its peak. That puts it in perspective.
Absolutely. And the leadership picture as well, it keeps changing. El Chapo arrested, his son Ovidio arrested.
Right. For a while, it seemed like Ismael El Mayo Zambada, the veteran leader, and Chapo's other sons, the Chapitos, were jointly in charge.
But then came that news in July 2024.
Exactly. Reports of both El Mayo Zambada and another of Chapo's sons, Joaquín Guzmán Lopez, being arrested by U.S. authorities in El Paso, Texas. That's a major, major development. Still unfolding, really.
The fallout from that will be huge. It just highlights the massive impact this cartel has, doesn't it? On the war on drugs, on politics in Mexico and beyond, even on pop culture.
Definitely. And despite all the crackdowns, the demand for drugs means they remain incredibly relevant, incredibly powerful in that international trafficking landscape.
Okay, let's dig a bit more into that early history you mentioned.
Okay.
Pedro Aviles Perez in the late 60s, the aircraft thing was key.
It really was. He's seen as the first generation of major Mexican marijuana smugglers, setting the stage for large-scale trafficking.
And his group trained the next wave.
Yeah, what's often called the second generation. That included guys like Rafael Caro Quintero, Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, Miguel Amo Felix Gallardo.
The ones who formed Guadalajara.
Right. And also Ismael Zambada Garcia El Mayo, who became so central to Sinaloa later, and even Aviles Perez's own nephew.
So Aviles' organization itself didn't last that long. He died in 78.
Yeah, killed in a shootout with federal police. But his legacy was the foundation he built and the people he brought into the trade.
Then Felix Gallardo steps up, co-founds the Guadalajara cartel, dominates the 80s corridors. His main rival was the Gulf Cartel.
Primarily, yeah. They controlled the eastern routes. But Gallardo was smart, in a way. By 1987, she saw the writing on the wall, especially after the DEA agent Kiki Camarina's murder.
He knew the U.S. pressure would increase.
Exactly. So he decided to divide his federation, as he called it, into smaller territories, or plazas.
Plazas, like regional franchises.
Kinda, yeah. Each controlled a specific geographic area, smuggling routes, enforcement, everything. The idea was decentralization. Make it harder to take down the whole operation at once.
And Sinaloa, with Culiacan as its HQ, was one of those original plazas.
It was. And even back then, late 80s, the DEA already saw the Sinaloa Cartel as the biggest player in Mexico.
Then Gallardo gets arrested in 89. He tried to run things from prison.
Initially, yes. But eventually, control slipped. His nephews, the Arellano Felix brothers, broke off and formed the Tijuana Cartel.
While Sinaloa carried on under Palma Salazar, Esparragoza, and El Chapo.
That's right. But this put Sinaloa in a tough spot. They were forced to try and move drugs through the Tijuana corridor.
Which the Arellano Felix brothers now controlled. Conflict was inevitable.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it exploded into open war after Ramon Arellano Felix killed some of Guzman's guys in the early 90s.
And this is where Ismael Zambada Garcia El Mayo becomes really important.
Crucially important. Guzmán brought him in for his coordination skills. While Chapo and Palma were in and out of prison during the 90s, El Mayo was instrumental in expanding the cartel's reach and power.
And his background wasn't typical cartel royalty, right? He was a farmer.
Started as a farmer, yeah. Small-time stuff, marijuana, a bit of heroin. He steadily worked his way up. By the mid-90s, some were comparing the Sinaloa organization size to the Medellin cartel's peak.
Wow. And he was involved in alliances too, like with the Juarez cartel.
Yeah, he helped Amado Carrillo Fuentes build up Juarez, and after Carrillo died in 97, under very strange circumstances.
The plastic surgery incident.
Right, that's the one. Zambada helped absorb parts of the Juarez cartel into Sinaloa's structure, forming a powerful bloc against the Gulf and Tijuana cartels. This was also when Sinaloa really perfected the art of the drug tunnel.
That war with Tijuana, 92 to 2000, sounds like it was personal and brutal.
Incredibly so. Reports say the leaders' families were living in constant fear. Then, around 2000, the Mexican government really started cracking down hard on the Tijuana cartel.
And El Mayo saw an opportunity.
He absolutely did. With Tijuana weakened, he moved quickly to strengthen Sinaloa's position. By the early 2000s, he was arguably one of the biggest drug lords in Mexico, with massive distribution networks into the U.S.
Cities like Chicago, Phoenix, LA, Atlanta, Denver. Those were his hubs.
Reportedly, yes. Huge hubs. He even supposedly helped arrange El Chapo's first prison escape in 2001 with a helicopter.
But Sinaloa itself wasn't immune to splits. The Beltran-Leyva brothers broke away in 2008.
That was a major fracture, yeah. Caused a lot of internal bloodshed.
And that war with Tijuana, it had deep roots, didn't it? Going back to Felix Gallardo setting up Palma's family.
Exactly. Palma retaliated in '92 at that disco in Puerto Vallarta, killed several Tijuana guys. Then Tijuana tried to get Guzmán at the Guadalajara airport in '93.
The incident where the cardinal was killed, that was a huge mess.
A total tragedy and incredibly controversial. 6 civilians died, including Cardinal Posadas Ocampo. The official story was mistaken identity, caught in the crossfire meant for Guzmán.
But there were doubts. The cardinal didn't look like Guzmán, wore robes.
Right, and was shot at close range. The church suspected it was targeted. Plus, adding another layer, some of the gunmen were from the Logan Heights gang out of San Diego. Still debated.
Such a violent history. By 2014, though, the Tijuana cartel was weakened, maybe even absorbed by Sinaloa.
Parts of it, yeah. Or forced into alliances. A key figure known as El Teo, a former Tijuana lieutenant, apparently switched sides and joined the Sinaloa Federation, which contributed to Tijuana's decline.
And around the mid-2000s, Sinaloa really consolidated power along the Arizona border.
They did. By 2006, they'd pushed out most rivals there. Other groups like Milenio, Jalisco, before CJ&G became its own huge thing, Sonora, Colima, they effectively became branches of the Sinaloa Cartel then.
And this was also when the huge HSBC money laundering scandal surfaced.
That's right. Massive amounts of cartel cash were flowing through the bank.
Then came that 2008 split with the Beltran-Leyvas. That really ramped up the violence across Mexico.
Dramatically. The tactics became horrific. Beheadings, bodies dissolved in acid, often filmed as propaganda. Just brutal.
And during this time, El Mayo's son, Vicente Zambada, was handling logistics.
He played a huge role, yeah. Coordinating multi-ton cocaine shipments, using everything planes, subs, ships, trucks.
Subs. Like actual submarines.
Narco subs, yeah.
Yeah.
Semi-submersibles mostly,
Yeah.
but incredibly effective. His arrest in 2009 and extradition to Chicago was a blow, though he eventually cooperated.
But even with losses like that, Sinaloa kept control of key corridors like Sonora, Arizona.
They did, as of 2013 anyway, relying on those plaza bosses in cities like Mexicali, Nogales, Agua Prieta.
Feeding into U.S. hubs like Tucson, Phoenix, and Atlanta. Atlanta became big for them.
Yeah, Atlanta emerged as a major distribution and accounting center in the Southeast. And unfortunately, that brought a spike in violence there, too.
And Chicago. Always Chicago.
Always Chicago. A massive market and a perfect distribution point for the Midwest, using the interstate system. They've long worked with local gangs there, like the Gangster Disciples.
Moving tons of product through neighborhoods like Little Village.
Exactly. Though that also creates friction with other local gangs wanting a piece of the action.
It's still wild that the Chicago Crime Commission named El Chapo public enemy #1 in 2013.
The first since Al Capone. And Chapo probably never even set foot in Chicago. Shows the perceived reach and impact.
And their reach went even further, right? The Philippines.
Yeah, since around 2013, evidence emerged they were using the Philippines as a transshipment point for drugs heading to the U.S.
Unnoticed at first.
Apparently. Until a raid in 2013 confirmed it. Even President Duterte acknowledged they were using the country. And sadly, it seems to have made the drug war situation there even worse.
And key figures kept getting taken out, like El Buda in 2019.
Juan Ulises Galvan Carmona, yeah, killed in Chetumal. He was apparently managing their Central and South American trafficking routes.
It's a constant churn. What about Los Negros? They were an enforcer wing.
Yeah, known for using gangs like MS-13. They fought hard for Nuevo Laredo after the Gulf Cartel leader Osiel Cardenas Guillen was arrested in 2003.
Because Nuevo Laredo is such a critical border crossing.
Hugely important. Control that plaza, you control a massive flow of goods, legal and illegal.
The violence there has terrible ripple effects, like on journalists trying to report on it.
Absolutely. The murder of Roberto Javier Mor Garcia in 2004 was a chilling message. And that violence just spread outwards to other parts of Mexico.
There are some big busts, too, like Villarreal in 2010 and Operation Accelerator in the U.S.
Accelerator in 2009 rounded up over 750 Sinaloa members across the U.S., seized a lot of assets. That same year, Mexico sent troops into Ciudad Juarez, trying to quell the war there.
And the DEA busted that big Chicago crew, the Flores brothers.
That was huge, yeah. Showed the scale, thousands of pounds of cocaine a month, coming from both Sinaloa and the Beltran-Leyvas. Apparently, the cartels even told the Flores brothers who they could buy from.
Incredible control. And more arrests followed Chapo's cousin, El Muñeco.
Jesus Alfredo Salazar Ramirez, El Muñeco. Arrested in 2012, he was a key lieutenant controlling production and trafficking in Sonora and Chihuahua.
And linked to the murder of an activist.
Allegedly responsible for killing Nepomuceno Moreno in 2011. Shows the brutality used to silence opposition.
Then Chino Antrax, arrested in Amsterdam, he led an enforcer group.
Jose Rodrigo Arachiga Gamboa, yeah. Leader of Los Antrax, Sinaloa's flashy and violent enforcement arm. Arrested in 2013.
But despite all these hits, the cartel just kept adapting, expanding further south.
Seems so. Reports suggested they pushed into Peru, Paraguay, Argentina, trying to diversify beyond the U.S. market too.
More violence, though. El Macho Prieto, killed in 2013. Arrests in the Philippines with meth.
Yeah, Gonzalo Inzunza, El Macho Prieto, another key leader under Guzmán, killed in Sonora. Then came the big one, El Chapo's capture in February 2014.
Followed by his escape in 2015.
A tunnel escape, yeah, incredible.
And then recapture in 2016. That whole saga was global news.
Absolutely dominated headlines. But it also highlighted the cartel structure. Taking out Chapo didn't end it.
Because of that decentralized nature you mentioned, the blood alliance idea.
Exactly, La Alianza de Sangre. It's more like a confederation, bound by regional ties, family connections going back decades. It's not a rigid top-down hierarchy.
The cipher brief noted that, right? That horizontal structure helps it survive leadership losses better than rivals.
Precisely. Decisions can be made across different cells. It's more resilient. When Palma was arrested in '95, Chapo took over. When Chapo was caught in '93, others stepped up. He escaped in 2001, and with Zambada, really consolidated power after the Gulf leader Cardenas was arrested in '03.
So even when Chapo was recaptured for good, Zambada was there to take the reins.
Largely, yes, though by 2020 there were reports El Mayo was ill and Chapo's sons, Los Chapitos, were gaining more power.
Which caused friction, even scuttled recruiting attempts.
Yeah, they apparently clashed with the Caro Quintero brothers who were potentially going to rejoin. But by late 2022, rumors surfaced they'd reconciled the Zambada faction and Los Chapitos.
To fight CJNG?
That seemed to be the motivation, yeah. Present a united front. Ovidio Guzmán, one of the Chapitos, was seen as a key leader of that faction when he was arrested in January 2023.
And then extradited to the U.S.
in September 2023. And that brings us back to the huge news from July 2024. El Mayo Zambada himself, the legendary co-founder, and Joaquín Guzmán López, another Chapito, arrested together in Texas.
The implications are immense. What does this mean for their operations now? What's their main focus in the drug trade today?
It seems cocaine and opioids, especially fentanyl, are top priorities, particularly for high-value markets like Chicago. Methamphetamine is still huge, but maybe less so in Chicago specifically.
The scale is mind-boggling. The U.S. estimated nearly 200 tons of cocaine just from Sinaloa between 1990 and 2008, plus massive amounts of heroin.
And then fentanyl exploded in the mid-2010s. That really changed the game, fueling the deadliest phase of the U.S. opioid crisis. At the same time, Colombian cocaine production hit record highs.
But they haven't abandoned meth or marijuana entirely.
Not at all. Meth operations are still significant in places like San Diego and Atlanta, and they run huge marijuana grows even inside the U.S., in California.
Their footprint in Mexico is vast, right? Present in most states by 2020.
A palpable presence, yeah.
Yeah.
And even within Sinaloa itself, there's that split territory between the Mayo faction and Los Chapitos controlling different municipalities.
And internationally.
Yeah.
Latin America, Canada, the U.S., even the Pacific.
Widespread. Latin America, obviously, the Caribbean, Canada, deep into the U.S., Southwest, South, Mid-Atlantic, and yeah, Australia, New Zealand. Places where drug prices are sky high. They import chemicals from China for production, too.
Let's talk tunnels again. The first one in '89, Agua Prieta to Douglas.
That was the beginning. When I got busted, they shifted focus to Tijuana Ote Mesa, acquired a warehouse there in '92.
And after the '93 airport shootout, that Taj Mahal tunnel was found.
Linked to Chapo, yeah, near the Tijuana airport. It was incredibly sophisticated for its time, half a mile long, electricity, ventilation, rail carts, a testament to their engineering and audacity.
And that area, Ejido Tampico, near the airport, it has a weird history that helped them.
It does. The government expropriated land from farmers there for the airport expansion back in the day, didn't properly compensate them.
So the farmers took it back and developed it without permits.
Exactly. And that chaotic, unpermitted development provided perfect cover for tunnel builders. A massive 2,400-foot tunnel was found there in 2006, similar to the '93 one.
And they kept finding more tunnels originating from there.
Constantly. Another huge one in 2011 went under the airport runway. It had an elevator, rail cars, practically next door to a military base and police station.
Unbelievable. And more found right before Chapo's extradition in 2016.
2 more super tunnels, yeah. It's clearly a preferred spot.
Yeah.
Even Chapo's alleged girlfriend was arrested at the airport's cross-border express crossing in 2017.
Okay, shifting gears to alliances. Things are always changing there. The Gulf Cartel, they used to be allies.
Traditionally, yeah, in some ways. But by 2021, that seemed over. CJ&G sided with the Gulf against Sinaloa in places like Zacatecas.
And Sinaloa is fighting La Linea and CJ&G in Ciudad Juarez.
That's the report, yeah. And now, with El Mayo's arrest, there are rumors of internal conflict, maybe sparked by Los Chapitos wanting full control.
But they still have internal allies, subgroups.
Definitely. While Antrax, Grupo Flechas are known enforcer wings, regional groups like Los Cabrera, Los Rusos, who are reportedly aligned with Mayo's faction, Los Chapitos, obviously, Los Mexicales in Juarez, Los Alizares in Sonora.
And internationally, it's a huge list. U.S. gangs, other Mexican cartels.
Crips in the U.S., Cartel del Noreste, La Nueva Familia Michoacana, Colombian groups like Los Rastrojos, paramilitary groups, even connections to European organized crime, Italian mafia, Albanian, Serbian, Irish mob, Moroccan groups.
What about the Hells Angels?
They've publicly denied any alliance.
And the Chinese triads, that's for precursor chemicals.
Primarily, yeah.
Yeah.
Suneon, 14K triad, crucial for synthetic drug production, meth, and fentanyl, and also for money laundering. Their presence in Colombia is also significant, partnering with groups like Clan del Golfo, even getting into coca cultivation directly.
Now, the really thorny issue, alleged collusion with authorities. There were those NPR reports back in 2009.
Alleging Mexican federal police and military were helping Sinaloa against rivals in Juarez, taking bribes, maybe even involved in killings. Officials denied it, but the claims were detailed.
And testimony at El Chapo's trial alleged massive bribes, even reaching a former president.
A $100 million bribe allegation against former President Peña Nieto, and the conviction of Genaro Garcia Luna, the former top security official, for taking millions from Sinaloa. That confirmed deep-seated corruption.
Allowing them access to intelligence, protection?
That's the implication. And it wasn't just Mexican officials. There were allegations involving U.S. agencies, too.
Newsweek reported Chapo's lawyer was a DEA informant, giving intel on rivals for immunity.
That was the claim, yeah. Trading information on Tijuana, the Beltran Levos, to let the DEA focus elsewhere, essentially allowing Sinaloa to grow stronger. Court documents did confirm some agreements between the DEA and cartel figures for intel.
And the Stratfor leaks suggested Mexican officials thought the U.S. was helping Sinaloa smuggle drugs to reduce violence.
That was a bombshell allegation from those leaked emails,
Yeah.
that the U.S. might be strategically allowing Sinaloa to dominate to bring a semblance of order. Highly controversial, of course.
Then Operation Fast and Furious, the ATF gun walking scandal. Allegations those guns went mainly to Sinaloa.
That was part of the fallout, yes. And Vicente Zambada Nibla, El Mayo's son, claimed in court filings he had an immunity deal with the U.S. for providing intel. The Justice Department shut that down, citing national security. Lots of unanswered questions.
So their main business today, South American cocaine, Mexican weed, meth, fentanyl, heroin, moving it all into the U.S.
That's the core business. Seems like the focus has shifted towards cocaine, fentanyl, and meth lately, maybe away from traditional heroin and MDMA.
And they use legal ports of entry a lot, with trap cars and American mules.
Increasingly, yes. It's harder to detect than crossing remote desert areas sometimes. They've also reportedly ramped up human smuggling activities at the border.
And other groups help them move product, like the Herrera organization with cocaine from South America.
Allegedly, yeah. Moving multi-ton loads through Central America, particularly Guatemala, which is a major transit point, or sometimes shipping directly from Colombia to U.S. distribution cells.
Sinaloa's role in Colombia itself is significant, right? Financing groups, growing coca.
Very significant. They operate directly there, competing fiercely with CJ&G, which has tragically displaced many Colombians caught in the middle.
And the trade routes are shifting. Venezuela, Ecuador becoming more important.
Definitely. Concerns about the cartel of the Suns in Venezuela facilitating traffic. And Ecuador has seen huge seizures. Sinaloa has a long partnership with the Choneros gang there.
They're a prison gang.
Started as one, now a major force controlling drug transport to the ports, especially Guayaquil. The assassination of their leader, Rosquina, in 2020 really destabilized Ecuador and led to a surge in violence.
Okay, let's focus on fentanyl. That's become Sinaloa's signature product almost.
Tragically, yes. They push raw powder and those counterfeit M30 pills that look like oxycodone.
Why fentanyl? Just profit.
Immense profit. It's synthetic, so no farming needed like opium poppies or coca. Precursor chemicals from China are cheap. processed in Mexico.
And it gets to the U.S. border fast.
Incredibly fast. Like precursors land at a port like Mazatlan, and 8 days later, the finished fentanyl can be at the U.S. border.
And the markup is insane. $1 to make sells for 10 or more.
At least, often much more on the street. They still traffic heroin, too, often mixing it with fentanyl to boost potency cheaply.
The Golden Triangle in Mexico used to be for opium and marijuana.
Sinaloa, Durango, Chihuahua, yeah. But crackdowns pushed the opioid market towards synthetics. Fentanyl became the replacement, sometimes called Mexican oxy.
And now there's a new Golden Triangle for fentanyl production itself.
Northern Baja California, Sinaloa, Sonora. That corridor sees the highest fentanyl seizures, Culiacan, Tijuana, Ensenada, San Luis Rio, Colorado. San Diego is called the U.S. epicenter for fentanyl trafficking now. Interceptions have skyrocketed.
And they use blind mules, Americans who don't know they're carrying.
Sometimes, yeah. Often paid large sums for what seems like a simple driving job. Tijuana itself has now seen a rise in local fentanyl addiction, too.
What about those colored fentanyl pills, the rainbow fentanyl?
Sinaloa started making multicolored fentanyl pills and powders. They claim it's to help users distinguish it from real medicine, to prevent overdoses from the deadly blue fakes.
Directly countering the DEA narrative that it was targeting kids.
Oh, exactly. That's the cartel side of it, anyway.
What about marijuana? Are they still big in that?
They still grow it in Mexico, but also increasingly in California. Huge. Illegal hill, grows in remote forests, deserts, stealing water, causing environmental damage. They can get multiple harvests a year.
But U.S. legalization must have hurt their marijuana profit.
It definitely has. U.S. domestic quality is often better. But they still move product to states where it's illegal. And the legal industry offers potential money laundering opportunities.
And they're branding it now. Star Kush.
Some factions, yeah. Los Chapitos reportedly have brands like that, with logos referencing Culiacan or their group identity. It's marketing cartel style.
And methamphetamine. CJ&G is bigger, maybe, but Sinaloa is still huge.
Oh yeah, Sinaloa has massive meth operations in North America. Meth use in Mexico itself has exploded. And meth is fully synthetic, potent, easy to smuggle relative to weight.
North America sees most global meth seizures.
A huge percentage, yeah. The U.S. market is enormous. They even tried setting up meth labs in the Netherlands around 2015 because profits were higher there.
Precursors still coming from China, India, Germany.
Arriving at ports like Manzanillo, fueling violence along those routes, Colima, Baja, Zacatecas. Highway 15 is a key corridor north, often smuggled in regular passenger cars through border crossings.
Which helped Sinaloa dominate synthetic drug production in Mexico.
Right. They really took over the U.S. meth market around 2005 after the U.S. crackdown on domestic precursor sales.
And they switched to different chemicals, resulting in different kinds of meth.
Exactly. Around 2007, they moved to fully synthetic precursors using methods like PDP reduction, the old biker gang method, which often results in a mix of meth isomers, less pure D-methamphetamine.
The corruption we touched on, it really undermines everything in Mexico, doesn't it?
It's pervasive. Alleged infiltration at all levels. It fuels violence, erodes trust in institutions. Look at Ciudad Juarez.
And their expansion across Latin America, displacing Colombian cartels that increased violence everywhere.
Absolutely. As Mexican DTOs like Sinaloa took over the transport role from declining Colombian cartels, they started competing fiercely for routes and production zones, leading to more conflict.
And the impact in the U.S., the drug epidemic, addiction, public health crises.
It's undeniable. Sinaloa is a major contributor to that, especially the opioid crisis with heroin and now fentanyl. Plus, the spillover violence in border regions puts immense pressure on U.S. law enforcement.
Finally, let's talk narco culture. Sinaloa and especially El Chapo are icons in a way, aren't they?
In a very complex and often disturbing way, yes. They feature heavily in documentaries, news series like Vice.
And fictional portrayals, El Chapo, the TV series, Narcos, Mexico.
Books, music, narco corridos are practically a genre defined by these stories, but it bleeds into American rap and hip-hop too. Remember the 701 merchandise?
Based on his Forbes ranking, yeah, that was everywhere for a while.
And Chapo himself was apparently obsessed with his image. He wanted Kate Del Castillo to help make a movie about his life.
After she wrote that open letter to him.
Yeah. That led to the infamous meeting with her and Sean Penn while he was on the run.
Which ironically helped authorities track him down.
It did. They nearly caught him shortly after, but he escaped again, supposedly with his chefs and a child. Just incredible stories.
He's popped up everywhere in pop culture. The Mule, Ozark.
Tom Clancy novels, jokes on late-night TV, numerous rap songs name-dropping him as a symbol of power and defiance.
So wrapping up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways? We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. I think the key things are its long adaptive history, its evolution into this vast global criminal network, the sheer scale and diversity of its operations, its undeniable impact on trafficking and violence, and yeah, its strange, significant place in popular culture.
Anything particularly stand out or surprise you as we went through this?
For me, it's always the resilience,
Yeah.
the ability to withstand major hits, the sophistication of things like the tunnels, the constant shifting of alliances. It's like a hydra. And the sheer level of alleged state collusion is always sobering.
Okay, so here's the big question to leave people with. With the very recent arrests of massive figures like El Mayo Zambada and another Guzmán son, what happens now? What is the future for the Sinaloa Cartel? And how does that change the whole international drug game?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? It's a pivotal moment. Will it lead to fragmentation, more violence? Will Los Chapitos consolidate full control? Or will new leaders emerge? We just don't know yet.
Definitely something to watch, and if folks want to learn more after this.
Oh, there are so many directions.
Yeah.
You could look into the history of CJ&G or other rivals, the specific impact of the drug war in regions like Michoacan or Guerrero, dive deeper into fentanyl's chemistry and spread, or explore narco corrido music and culture. It's a vast and complex world.